satellite images show the extent of damage that Indian air power inflicted on Pakistan air bases when India was retaliating for Pakistan's misadventure in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. This damage to Pakistan's air bases may explain why Pakistan's Director General of Military Operations suddenly dialed India, and this was preceded by a phone call from Pakistan's Army Chief to US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This we know to be the sequence of events. But Trump lives in an alternate universe. And for the fourth and the fifth time now, he has taken credit for the so-called mediation between India and Pakistan, a claim that has been firmly rejected by India. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. The president, who is, of course, the supreme commander of the armed forces, met with the military chiefs today, even as the prime minister in the last 24 hours sent out a strong message to Pakistan with his meeting with air warriors at the Adipur base in Punjab. The S-400 that formed the backdrop to the prime minister's comments made its own statement debunking Pakistan's lies that Pakistan had managed to inflict damage either to the base or the S-400 system. Satellite images have also shown the full extent of damage that India's air warriors were able to inflict on Pakistan's air bases. But Donald Trump either doesn't know that, hasn't been briefed, or pretends to ignore all of it. Now, for the fourth time, he made a public comment about how he basically used trade to strike a deal with India and Pakistan, getting them to agree on a ceasefire. This is something that the Foreign Ministry of India has now officially rebutted. But Trump has doubled down on those comments, making the same comments in an interview to Sean Hannity. We'll have more on that in just a moment. The good news is that our BSF Jawan, Mr. Shaw, BSF Constable Shaw, is back home. That's his image. He was welcomed at the Atari Wagah border. Remember, he is somebody who has been in Pakistan custody for the last many days. His wife was expecting a baby. So this comes as a big relief. And the Pakistani ranger in Indian custody has also been handed back. After a long time, it has been a quiet night, including no sighting of drones. Otherwise, for the last few nights, we were on the ground, as all of you know, in Jammu and Punjab, earlier Kashmir. And in Jammu and Punjab, literally every night, in some part or the other, there was a drone sighting, which was then intercepted by India's air power. And this is after the ceasefire. We've had a quiet night, but we don't know what this actually means, because the Prime Minister has indicated that Operation Sindoor is not over. This is only a pause. How do we understand the messaging, the geopolitics? Why is Trump obsessed with an area that he clearly doesn't even understand? He doesn't understand Kashmir. He doesn't understand India and Pakistan. Why is he doubling and tripling down and making bizarre comments? Let me introduce our guest today as we continue to look at the cataclysmic consequences of Operation Sindoor. Yashovardhan Azad is with us, veteran IPS officer, former special director with the Intelligence Bureau, military veteran General Sharma is with us. Welcome to the program, sir. And veteran diplomat Ambassador Dilip Sinha is with us. I'm going to play out Donald Trump's, this has to be the craziest statement of all the statements he makes, because actually this was an offensive statement because he trivialized the Pahalgam terror attack. He trivialized Operation Sindoor. He trivialized the lives that many of our fellow countrymen and women have lost in the last few days in the line of duty by kind of joking that why don't India and Pakistan go out to dinner together? Take a look.
Just days ago, my administration successfully brokered a historic ceasefire to stop the escalating violence between India and Pakistan. And I used trade to a large extent to do it. I said, fellas, come on, let's make a deal. Let's do some trading. Let's not trade nuclear missiles. Let's trade the things that you make so beautifully. And they both have very powerful leaders, very strong leaders, good leaders, smart leaders. And it all stopped. Hopefully it'll remain that way, but it all stopped. I was very proud of Marco Rubio and all of the people that worked so hard. Marco, stand up. What a great job you did on that. Thank you, J.D. Vance. Marco, the whole group worked with you, but it was a great job. And I think they're actually getting along. Maybe we can even get them together a little bit, Marco, where they go out and have a nice dinner together. Wouldn't that be nice?
I mean, I've reached the point where, yeah, okay, the first few times we smiled at him, but this man is, I don't know, he's the American president, so he can't be ignored, but he's like in an alternate reality of his own. The foreign ministry has categorically denied that trade was even discussed. I'm just going to play out that comment very briefly and we'll open it up for the debate.
Kandirmi had a question regarding trade matters. From the time of Operation Sindoor commenced on 7th May till the understanding on cessation of firing and military action on 10th May, there were conversations between Indian and US leaders on the evolving military situation. The issue of trade did not come up in any of these discussions.
So, Ambassador Sinha, India has categorically rejected that there's any connection between those back channel talks, whatever they were about. The ceasefire, which is not a word, by the way, India uses. India uses the word understanding ceasefires in American nomenclature, and trade talks. So, you heard there the MEA spokesperson categorically rejecting it. As one of our audience members says, it's funny to see how JD Vance started by saying it's none of America's business when tensions were on the fray. From that to declaring that the American president is talking to mediator on Kashmir, how does one make sense of it? It is truly bizarre. He seems to have got obsessed. I mean, maybe he's in pursuit, as everybody believes, of a Nobel Peace Prize. But he's kind of stoking the fires. He's trivializing. And if he were anybody else, he could have been ignored. But he's the world's most powerful man. What do you make of it, Dilip Sinha?
Nobody can make anything of him, and he should actually be given an Oscar for the best comedian in the world. It is unbelievable. He can get away with any kind of statement. He treats his own Secretary of State in a foreign country like a schoolboy. They get up, they stand up, and take a clap. That's not the way you treat your senior ministers, but he does that. Now, he should understand that when two countries are in war, in a very short war of 4 days, and there are short telephone conversations, don't start discussing trade. In any case, MEA does not discuss trade. Trade is discussed by the Ministry of Commerce in India, not a Secretary of State in the US discuss trade. It's a completely different, a very complex subject, and there are talks taking place between India and the US on trade. And if he tells the Saudis that India and Pakistan should promote trade, why is he imposing all kinds of tariffs on countries like India and Pakistan if he wants these countries to export to the US and trade with it? So Trump is Trump. I mean, he just goes around making fun of everybody, and we just have to accept and take him for what he is. In this particular event, the sequence of events that our people indicate is that after we struck those 3 air bases, Pakistan then called up the Americans and asked for intervention. The Americans called us and said, Pakistan is offering a ceasefire or an understanding to ceasefire. We told the Americans, look, you tell the Pakistanis to call us. So the DGMO then called the Indian DGMO and asked for a ceasefire or asked for a cessation of hostilities, which India accepted. And this is more or less corroborated by, if you read between the lines of what the DG ISPR, Sharif Chaudhry said in Pakistan, it's more or less follows that same sequence. We can discuss that later.
Right. In fact, on the screen now are newly available satellite images from Maxar. These have been released today. They show the before and the after. You can see, you have a clear overview of the ruin that India's air warriors were able to inflict on these bases. General Sharma, the New York Times argued that one of Pakistan's biggest fears has been that India could decapitate Pakistan's nuclear command. And they panicked. They called the Americans called the Indians said, tell them to call us. And the DGMO then calls us at 3:45. Trump has some other sort of crazy narrative. What is actually going on here? What is going on here? Why does he comment on it every day? And should India be publicly taking him on now? Are we now seeing a kind of friction with one of our I don't want to use what is the word I can use? Strongest partnerships in one of our strongest partnerships.
Thank you, Barkha. Let me put it this way, that we've seen President Trump for a very long time. His old videos of 1989 onwards have been now been shown across, and he always plays to the galleries. There is a way with him, and he's been doing this for 20, 30 years. Now, of course, he's come of age. He's come of age, and he's again playing to the galleries, and he plays to those issues. Probably he doesn't get a feedback that there are rebuttals being issued. There is anxiety in the countries that he's naming the way he's naming it. He doesn't probably be informed by the State Department or the Pentagon or his NSA saying, or Chief of Staff saying, that countries are not liking it. Nobody has an access to him. So he keeps saying same thing again and again and again. And naturally, every time it adds, there's one additional sentence added to that gallery saying they should have dinner together. I thank God he didn't say with the Michelin cook. But the fact is that I sometimes get anxious here. Do we need to rebut him? Does it make a difference to rebut him? Sometimes you'll see what will our public think, or our political polity will think, that when they say that trade became an issue for getting a ceasefire here, and people will take the trade issue up and make a noise. But I think India in general, even people understand that most of these remarks don't mean, and they are not correct at all. And we don't have to rebut him and just accept him the way it is. This is his starting of his term. We have to live through 4 years. We will be continuously every day rebutting him only, so that becomes a full-time job of rebuttals. So I think we need to take a step back and say, okay, you carry on the way you carry on, and smile him away. I understand what you said, that he's important, and you can't just wish him away.
I mean, as an individual, I would ignore him, but the position he holds becomes a bit difficult. Also, if you join the dots, Yashovardhan, to the fact that the Americans and the Chinese seem to have reached some sort of trade agreement. We now know, because of the images released by the Indian military, the role of China in helping Pakistan to fight this, to fight India, to actually attack or attempt to attack India, attacks all thwarted. So, we have Chinese-made missiles, Turkish-made drones. Today, we have seen India move to scrap the social media handles of TRT, which is a Turkish television network, and also Global Times, which is the Chinese state social media handle. So all I'm saying is the geopolitics of it, I don't know if it can be ignored. I think the one lesson India probably has to take is we should, double down on our growth story. We should build heft around our story, so we don't need any of these partnerships, because in the end, our battle with terrorism is going to have to be fought by us.
Absolutely true, Barkha. In fact, one of the most important lessons we have learned from this 4-day war is that you don't have a friend in war, except arms manufacturers, perhaps, because it was more a war between two groups of defense systems. The Chinese and Turkey on one side, and the Russians and Rafales and French on the other side. And diplomacy, again, is just has reduced itself to a subterfuge of words, where even you can't take a stand against a terrorist state in which they have proscribed terrorists, and yet there is a kind of an equivalence between the two nations, as if they are fighting over some spoils or they are fighting over Kashmir. So these are two very important lessons. Imagine India being a member of the Quad, India being in strategic partnership with the United States of America, and yet you realize that in the Cold War era, we were better off when the Russians would just come to our support for anything and block anything in the Security Council. So yes, times have changed, and I think this is the biggest learning, that today, even on the issue of targeting terror camps, the statements which were issued by the various countries were just that, yes, India has a right to self-defense, and India has a right to, attack terror, but nothing else. So I think we did it on our own, and we did brilliantly well, and I'm extremely happy about that. We proved a point this time.
Yeah, sure. Do you believe that what, as usual, Pakistan was able to deploy in the Western world, not with us, was nuclear blackmail? because, I'll just play out after you comment another statement, the fifth statement by Donald Trump on his own alleged proclaimed role in this Operation Sindoor. And what Pakistan always does is put out this narrative in the West that, oh, there could be a nuclear war. And then the West comes running and tells India, step back. Right? Now, the Prime Minister in his speech said nuclear blackmail is not acceptable. So clearly, India has drawn a red line, but the world doesn't seem to understand that.
I have a different take. Yes, you're absolutely right. In fact, I was going to talk about the role of the international press. International press, as usual, CNN correspondent, I think it was Marika or somebody, who was showing those broken buildings and the mosques and saying how people are upset. She doesn't know that she was, speaking from the fount of terror. She was speaking from Muridke, that is let headquarters. And then there is another correspondent, I recall, maybe from the CNN itself, who says that his source tells him that India approached for the ceasefire. So yes, there is a kind of a bias. And as you know, Barkha, that the BBC said that there were some gunmen or militants who sort of massacred this. So yes, there is a press. For that, I have another take also, that we need to engage the international press in a much better fashion, And in fact, if you see the press conferences, there was just one question from the international press, the Reuters, and there were no questions from any international press at all. So that's a different thing. But coming back to this nuclear blackmail, and my both distinguished co-panelists will know what I'm alluding to. I think it was the bombing and proper bombing of Sargodha and the Noor Khan bases, I think, which got them running. And we immediately saw the pictures on the screen, TV screens of American plane landing for detection of radiation and things like that. So look at it; it's so clear. And another point, if you take the comments of the airfare war, aviation war analysts all over the world, they have clearly said, and Maxar, which you talked about, the technology, has given detailed satellite pictures of all the damage which has been caused. And yet the international press kept on saying that it was the nuclear fallout danger, which was, yes, nuclear fallout danger must be on the side, as you said, decapitating their nuclear command. That was perhaps the main reason.
So I want to play out two statements. When you've spoken about the bombing of the Sargodha and the Noor Khan bases, which we know are close to nuclear facilities in Pakistan, nuclear storage facilities. First, I will play out what the Air Operations Chief, Air Marshal Bharti, said when he was asked on Kirana Hills. Let me play this statement out for you.
Thank you, sir. Snesh Philip here from the print. So the social media, the Twitter is abuzz with the fact that we hit a site called Kirana Hills, which is supposed to be the nuclear storage facility. And there is a lot of rumors about Sargodha. There are foreign analysts who've mentioned that the Sargodha attack led to certain leaks. Is there a confirmation that we actually hit Kirana Hills, or we were careful of not to do any such thing? Thank you.
Thank you for telling us that Kirana Hill houses some nuclear installation. We did not know about it. Okay. And we've not hit Kirana Hills, whatever is there. Okay. I did not brief in my briefing yesterday. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen.
So he very cryptically and comic, with a sense of humor, shut down that question. I loved it, actually. He was so funny, Air Marshal Bharti. But Trump, now this is his fifth statement, I've been counting, now does an interview on Air Force One with Sean Hannity and once again references nuclear war. Take a look.
Potential nuclear war, and two countries, they have very good leaders, people I know very well, and it was a very important process. We got involved with India and Pakistan,
You got involved early. Can you give us a little insight what happened behind the scenes? How were you able?
Well, I didn't like what was happening, and you hear, they're two very strongly nuclear countries, very, very powerful amount of nuclear too, serious stuff. And if that ever started, boy, that's the beginning of something that could be really bad. Even a minimal, you could have millions of people killed. And with one shot, two shots, and I just thought it was something we could get involved in. And I did a good job. Marco did a good job, and JD did a good job. We sort of were a team, and we, I think, convinced them to let's have peace and let's go and make trade deals. If we can make trade deals, we like that much better than nuclear weapons.
Okay. Ambassador Sinha, the point is that this, the Air Force shut down this question on Kirana Hills. But Trump keeps talking about this, it would have become a nuclear war. There was a real danger. I stepped in, Rubio said. And the Prime Minister says the nuclear blackmail is unacceptable, right? Now, in between these two positions, we've got to navigate our way with the United States.
Well, yes. Donald Trump had promised that he would bring about a ceasefire in Gaza and in Ukraine within days of taking over. Now it's months, and he's not succeeded. So here is one war in which he thinks he has brought about a ceasefire. And the more dangerous the war he projects, a possibility of a nuclear war, the greater his success. So I don't think we should really deny him this little pleasure of saying that he's prevented a nuclear war. Actually, for US policy, I would go back to the statement made by his own vice president just 2 days before this ceasefire. That was on Thursday, which is on the 8th. And J.D. Vance has said that this is fundamentally none of our business. And that is what is reflected in the US policy, because when the war started, the US did not call up and say ceasefire. The US did not take the initiative. The US took the initiative only when the Pakistanis called them on the 10th, asking for intervention to stop India from attacking any further. And then they called us, and we told them to call the DGMO and asked them to call back. Now, that to us is what is the expression of American policy. But as General Sharma said, if Donald Trump wants to take credit for it, let him take credit. After all, let's face it, Pakistan does listen to America to a certain extent, not always. So if America puts a certain amount of pressure upon Pakistan, that should be welcome from our point of view. And we should really now go back to what you said, double down on our economic growth and our trade talks. We've got the agreement with the UK. We should look for an agreement with the US. So I don't think we should really go around nitpicking with Donald Trump, whether he stopped a nuclear war or not. The fact is that our attacks on these bases showed that we have called Pakistan's nuclear bluff, that Pakistan cannot hold us to a nuclear blackmail ransom. And the very fact that the moment these attacks took place, Pakistan did not retaliate any further. They called up Washington. So that is to us is the important takeaway from this, that we are capable of taking on Pakistan despite Pakistan's nuclear arsenal, and we can protect ourselves from any possible, even a nuclear retaliation by Pakistan.
Now, General Sharma, one thing we've heard the Prime Minister message in the last 2 days has been that if Pakistan does this again, there will be kinetic action. I'm summarizing him, but that was the big takeaway for me. If they do this, we will remove the pause button. We will simply, remove ourselves from the pause holding position that we're in. So what phase of conflict management are we entering with Pakistan?
Barkha, first allow me to battle through this nuclear business.
Correct.
Now, we have one of these long-standing CBMs that we have with Pakistan, other than the IWT, is that on 1st of every year, we exchange the nuclear data with each other. And it's been through even Kargil time, we've been exchanging that. Post-Kargil, Prakram. This has been standing CBM in which all our sites were exchanged to each other. It ostensibly implies that they should not be targeted. So was Kirana Hills part and parcel of that list that Pakistan gives to us first of every year? That needs to be asserted, and I'm at grave doubts in this one. Second point I want to raise is that the Americans have been involved in about 15, 20 years ago in establishing some kind of permissive action links, the PL, the communication structure for nuclear weapons. It's a kind of control that they apply, and so they may be knowing a little more on where the Pakistanis are keeping their nuclear weapons and or nuclear warheads, which anybody else may not know. Third point is Air Marshal Aurangzeb in one of his briefings said that they were attempting to spoof the missiles that we were sending across there. So Noor Khan and Sargodha is a childhood name that we know, like Muridki and Bhavalpur and Raiwind. So we know Sargodha is the most important base. It would be hit. Any base being hit, Sargodha will be hit. But if you're trying to spoof our missiles in a way, and that's what he's saying, Air Marshal Aurangzeb, saying that we were wanting to spoil the place where the missiles are landing, so that they go into what he said, no man's land. His words, not me. So it crosses that air base and goes and hits somewhere else, which is called
Can
no
you
man's land.
explain this? Can you explain this? What do you mean by spoof? Because a lot of people will not understand who are not from the military.
So see, we rely on GPS, which is an American system. Pakistanis rely on Beidou, which is the 44 satellite constellation of the Chinese. So Pakistan has enmeshed itself with the Chinese systems. So when a missile is sent, you try to interfere with this computer systems when it's going up or coming down, or as a cruise missile, so that it doesn't land up at the circular error of probability, which could be 30 meters. So you try and spoil it, and then it goes across away from the base and hits somebody else. So when Air Marshal Aurangzeb said that they were trying to do so that it goes to no man's land, and in this case, no man's land is also Pakistani land. It is not that it is going to some other country. But they could have themselves spoofed it in a manner that it goes and hits the Kirana Hills. I think we were not informed about Kirana Hills, and if it hit Kirana Hills, and if it had nuclear sites, and as Air Marshal Bharti had said, well, it's their problem. Yeah, we don't know about it, and naturally it can hit any site. So I think.
But could that explain the panic in how this? You see, I want to remind all three of you, and General Sharma, I was talking to you. I think all three of you are different points on the ground. That day, it felt like a near war situation. That is the day that missile was intercepted in Haryana. Drones were intercepted over homes in Jammu, a temple complex in Jammu. Shells were falling in border villages. A few hours later, the Pakistan DGMO calls our DGMO. Do you think the timing or the panic in Pakistan was because perhaps as our missiles decimated their air bases, this attempt to spoof Indian missiles coming in made the missile land somewhere at a place, the information on which, for example, Kirana Hills, they hadn't shared with the Indians, and then they panicked. And they said, "Hamara to, nuclear storage hi khatam ho jayega, ya kuch ho jayega," whatever. They went into panic. Does that, I want to ask all three of you this, does that explain the suddenness with which the DGMO of Pakistan calls his counterpart here? Or the Americans? They also obviously reach out to the Americans.
Okay, let me begin, as you said. One point is that when these 11 air bases were hit, so what has happened is Pakistan had relied itself on the air defense system provided to it by the Chinese, the Su-9s, and there are a large number of them. Only one we hit in Lahore, but there were many of them. And the Su-9s were not able to hold on to these 9 air bases that were hit on the 9th and 10th, which is starting from Skardu. And Skardu, which is that side of Kargil, and right till the south. So the whole area. Now they understood that we have the capability of hitting it, and with a supersonic missile like BrahMos, and they don't have a tod for it. They can't stop. First issue is this, and then second is, and it was all over the country. So there's a psychological game played by these 11 bases that we hit. And the second is that Kirana hits. Probably the Americans knew a little more than we knew, and they said, one of our nuclear storage sites has been hit. And they could be damaged. Whether it hit us by spoofing or we actually hit it is a separate issue. But the Americans would have reacted to say that, okay, we have helped them establish something like this, and Americans would know the tunnels being built or whatever this way. So I would deem it that the two things combined together, the failure of their air defense systems against our missiles and the hitting of the Kirana Hills, may have all combined together to to sort this issue out, and them start going crying on the shoulder saying that, okay, we are nuclear thing, and you can have a blast on this one. And President Trump picked it up and saying millions. He used the word millions could have died. I mean, there was nothing nuclear being sought about. How would millions die in precise bombing? So I thought that was the issue here, Barkha.
Yeah, I think you explained it very
I'll talk
well.
about the terror.
I'll come to that.
Yeah.
Just hold that thought, Sharma. Just let's get comments on this, because this is a very important conversation, because India has shut down rumors that Kirana Hills was a target. Let's first say that. Air Marshal Bharti said Kirana Hills was not targeted. It was not part of our operation. General Sharma has just explained, Ambassador Sinha, that yet Pakistan could be trying to spoof our missiles, and the missile could have therefore landed somewhere where it was not targeted, right? And that could have been near one of these nuclear storage facilities, which was not on India's target list. And the data of that would not probably have even been transparently shared by Pakistan with India. But that could explain the sudden panic in Pakistan, the outreach to the Americans, the outreach to India. Do you see that sort of adds up, or do you have another take? Ambassador Sinha and Yashovardhan both. Ambassador?
I don't really know much about this, about the Kirana Hills. General Sharma has pointed out that on the first day of each year, we do have a tradition of exchanging the addresses, the geographical coordinates of all nuclear installations. Now, obviously, when Kirana Hills was possibly not part of that list, so if we have hit Kirana Hills, then Pakistan cannot claim that you had hit a nuclear site. But if you look at the sequence of events that even the DG ISPR said, now he said that after the 7th of May, when India struck, the night of 6th, 7th May, when India struck first, India offered a ceasefire. But Pakistan said that we will not accept it and we will respond in our own way, which Pakistan did over the next 2-3 days, striking at 26 of our military installations. Now, that happened between the 7th and the 10th. Now, the 10th morning, we had these major strikes on places like the Noor Khan Air Base. That Noor Khan Air Base is the Chaklala Airport, which is the base right next to Rawalpindi, the capital. And thereafter came this report that Pakistan's Nuclear Control Authority, a meeting of that had been called. At the same time, we know that the Pakistanis called up the Americans.
Yeah.
And then later, the army chief said that there was no proposal for a meeting of the Nuclear Control Authority. Now, whether that meeting was just to bluff or it wasn't, I don't know. But quite certainly, the attack on Chaklala, I would say, would really have disturbed the Pakistani leadership.
Yashi, you want to add to that?
By and large, I agree with both my distinguished co-panelists. I remember, and you would recall also, Barkha, the first day after we had precision strikes on the various terror bases and camps, I remember one of the statements coming out from Pakistan Prime Minister, somebody that if now India doesn't up the ante, then we are ready to sort of, water it down. But then gradually, I think two things after that happened. One is, I must say that the attack on the air defense system in Lahore, and secondly, the brutality of the attack on Noor Khan Air Base, Chaklala, which was there earlier, certainly made a lot of difference. It hit the prestige. And, we were hearing a lot about this Bakhtiar missile, TB2, the latest. I don't know, Sharma would know that, but our BrahMos were very, very, And I realized that in 3 days, the devastation took place. Was really unfathomable to them. But lastly, I still think, yes, there was a problem about some radiation leak, because I heard Kirana Hill has 6 gates, and one of the gates there was an issue, and then the American plane landed over there. Now, right in the view of everything, if that has to come, it means it was of very, very great urgency, because it would have always been checked later. So
Or they were lying.
Exactly. So these two reasons, which I already said, Sargodha and the attack on Noor Khan and the destruction of the Lahore air base, I mean, it was a pretty devastating war from them. And I do wish that we hadn't accepted the ceasefire after they violated, and we should have gone the whole hog. But anyway, that's a different matter.
Yeah, we will come to where the fight goes from here. General Sharma, do you want to add to this Kirana Hills, the rumors? First, it's important to say that India says Kirana Hills was not a target. I want to just underline that again and again. Secondly, it's important to say that, as General Sharma has pointed out, that in this exchange of data that both countries traditionally are supposed to do about nuclear storage facilities, Kirana Hills was not shared. Uh, Thirdly, Pakistan was trying to spoof, as General Sharma has explained, using Chinese technology, Indian missiles that were coming in on retaliation on these air bases. In that course, could it be that the missile landed somewhere near one of their facilities that made them panic? Noor Khan itself is close enough to a nuclear storage facility for them to go into a tailspin. तो किराना हिल्स पे तो आने की जरूरत नहीं है. But then, General Sharma, Pakistan is also perfectly capable, and I don't know the truth. I have no independent corroboration. I'm also reading the same, inputs from here and there. Pakistan is also capable of dialing America and, doing a cry wolf on हमारे को तो खतरा है, nuclear खतरा है. I mean, they can just lie. General Sharma, just a comment on this.
So, when Pakistan would dial up a phone, it's not like Nawaz Sharif ringing up Clinton on 1st of July in Kargil
1999 in Kargil, yeah.
Or Mike Pompeo saying he stopped the war in 2019 after the Balakot strike, when he writes in his book. It is typical of Americans to take credit for everything that happens in the world, and in India and Pakistan, they have been taking credit for a very, very long time. I would deem that the United States may have a little more knowledge on their sites where they store the nuclear weapons or warheads, because they established the PL, the communication systems in this thing in Pakistan. One thing I'd like to add is that while we are supposed to exchange the data on 1st of every year, no country, even if you have a CBF, will exchange the data where I would keep my warheads. I'll tell you, okay, I got a Trombe, I got a Bark, I got Kalapakkam, I have got all these sites I'll give him. But if I'm keeping my nuclear warheads in place A, well, I'll never share it, even in India, because, then you also become a target. So, while we can legally say that they didn't share it with us, but we don't expect them also to share it with us, as Kirana Hills was the place that they're keeping. There were some talks earlier of Chagai Hills where they did the nuclear testing also. So there are many places that they will do so. So yeah. I think we take it that we didn't know, and this missile landed here in that area, which was problematic, and the Americans recognized that this is a dangerous place, and they would have seen it through the satellite imageries also, and they reacted the way the Americans would have reacted, saying there's a nuclear thing happening. And so whatever the eventology is, I would grant it that the events lead in a way that the United States recognize the danger of Kirana Hills and the reaction, and immediately people started saying, as Mr. Azad is saying, that two seismic some earthquakes happened, and all these news media started off. So there were a whole lot of confusion being caused out there.
Yeah.
So they took a step back and saying ceasefire is the right answer to this issue here. However, now good thing is that they'll have to make one more Kirana in some other place, because now we know that Kirana is Kirana. So now they'll have to go to some more retail issues than Kirana shops. So they'll have to go to some better Kirana shops.
On a lighter note, the memes have been absolutely fabulous. Yasho, sorry, you wanted to come in, and I was just going to play out a clip of Hina Rabani Khar's face-off with me and take last comments from you. But Yasho, go ahead. Yasho, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, about whether Kirana store or Hills, the point which Trump had ready made was the one which you made so eloquently that day, that if the terror camps have been hit by India, then the Pakistan should have actually thanked us that, we've hit your terror bases. But that made Miss Hina run away from the television. Yeah, please show that.
Correct. I'm going to show, you can all watch the fuller show. It's on Piers Morgan's channel. But I'll just show a little clip. I kept asking her about the Lashkar and the Jaish. Do you accept that they're terror groups? If America taking out Osama bin Laden from Pakistan was not an act of war, why is Operation Sindoor targeting these bases an act of war? Finally, when she couldn't say anything, she and her other Pakistani guests started criticizing Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister. To which I said this, and this is how she ended up finally leaving the show. Take a look. Yeah, I'm going to ignore Shehzad's infantile comments and focus on what I want to say. It doesn't matter whether you in Pakistan like or don't. Can I speak, please? It doesn't matter whether you like or don't like Prime Minister Modi. He is an elected Prime Minister of India in his third term. Unlike the Prime Ministers of Pakistan who are appointed by the army, jailed or exiled. Your country is in turmoil because you have jailed Imran Khan. Nawaz Sharif and Shehbaz Sharif, his brother, who's the present Prime Minister, is an appointee of the army. Before that,
Are we here
Nawaz
to listen to
Sharif,
Barkha's version of Pakistan's internal politics? Is that the purpose of this?
You commented, ma'am, you commented on my country's internal politics. I am responding
I commented on the Gujarat.
I am responding
and I would be very
Let's talk about
humbled
Khaja
to
Asif.
be corrected on that.
There's your defense minister. You know what your defense minister said on television? Yes, we did support.
I told you, I'm not a journalist. I don't have
Ma'am, you're interrupting me. Ma'am, I did not interrupt you. Grant me the same civility. I did not interrupt.
Please go ahead.
Khaja Asif, whose picture Ranveer held up, said in an interview to Sky News that indeed Pakistan had used terrorism as to do the dirty job. I guess Hina couldn't tolerate the truth. Maybe she just left. Khaja Asif said on Sky News that Pakistan used to do the dirty job for other countries by using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. Bilawal Bhutto said on the same channel, indeed, Pakistan has a past. Through this entire conversation, neither Pakistani has answered, are the Lashkar and the Jaish terror groups or not? And if they are, why are they allowed to function openly in Muriki and Bahawalpur, where Indian action was taken against terror bases and terror bases alone? And a last point, Prime Minister Modi did try dialogue with Pakistan. He went to visit Nawaz Sharif in his home in Lahore. He invited Nawaz Sharif when he was sworn in as Prime Minister the first time. All of that came to naught because Pakistan's entire existence seems to be to conduct a proxy war against India. India would love to ignore Pakistan. India wants nothing Pakistan has. If Pakistan would stop inflicting terrorism on our country, we would be quite happy to never engage with them.
Okay.
But she left before answering that question. For 45 minutes, I tried to get her to say, do you admit that the Lashkar and the Jaish are terror groups? If you do, say thank you to us. We took them out for you. But she didn't answer and then she left. Now comes the last. Yeah, Yashu, I'll start with you with last comments. Yashovardhan Azad.
I'm extremely disappointed with the American attitude for one reason. In the Mumbai attack, the Americans had lost 6 nationals. They got Headley. They got all the details of the ISI handlers and everyone. And yet, the Americans did not ask for the extradition of those ISI handlers who were named by Headley. We didn't get them because of our adversarial relations, but even Americans did. So therefore, this kind of a partnership, which is a little, we can't see between Pakistan or Britain and America has been there. And despite our strategic relationship, it didn't matter. And that's why I said, in today's war, you're all alone. Your only friend behind you is the arms manufacturer who's looking after his sales.
Ambassador Sinha, do you agree with that? That in this war, India was alone. That we know what China and Turkey did, and I want General Sharma to come in on the use of Chinese weaponry, Turkish drones, and so on. But the Americans, they didn't really stand with us in the way that everybody said, oh, Trump is going to be great for India. Trump is going to be better for India. Trump is only there for himself. That's clear. Point 1. Point 2, he's busy trying to strike a deal with the Chinese, right? And point 3, this terror emanating out of Pakistan had ramifications from the world. Whether it is the beheading of a Daniel Pearl, 23 years later, his father is still fighting, going from pillar to post. Omar Saeed Sheikh, who was released in exchange for the passengers' safety on IC 814 from a Delhi prison, Tihar jail, he got acquitted by Pakistan's Supreme Court. He's the one who kidnapped. He's the one who kidnapped Daniel Pearl. 6 Americans died in the Mumbai attacks. I mean, this has ramifications for the world, and yet the world is pretending this is some jhagda between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. I mean, it's just bullshit. Ambassador Sinha, last comments.
Well, I entirely agree with Yasho that especially when it comes to Pakistan, then we are entirely on our own, because the West has a certain relationship with Pakistan that goes back to the creation of that country by the United Kingdom, and thereafter taken over as the baby was handed over to America, and America has nurtured that country. Now, there has been a slight change in the American policy after 9/11, but not enough for us to say that America will side with us in a confrontation with Pakistan. That will not happen because America has a certain relationship with the Pakistani army, with various Pakistani generals, and Pakistan continues to serve certain strategic aims of the United States in this region and elsewhere also. So I think we should keep that in mind, but we have to continue to deal with the US. After all, it is our largest partner, and we need the US strategically in other spheres. So we just have to live in this modern world where we are on our own, and yet we need allies for certain situations.
General Sharma, where does Operation Sindoor go from here? We've seen an ongoing Operation Keller by the army in the Kashmir Valley. 3 terrorists have been taken out. The ammunition recovered in that encounter has been put on display. I think we can move to those images as well. But it's, God forbid there's another terror attack. The Prime Minister has made it clear that there will be kinetic action. There will be kinetic action every time now. That seems to be the doctrine now. But it is a doctrine we have to accept that we might be alone on. China is the ghost in the battlefield. It's the character that isn't there up front, but is there at the back, in the shadows.
So, Barkha, you have raised strong issues in the end. And, we need to take a step back after this 1 week that has passed here. One is that we demonstrated military superiority of a strong kind. But there is a Chinese collusivity. It was absolutely clear. The kind of communication systems, the kind of satellite imageries that we were buying from Maxar Technologies, while Chinese were giving directly online communication systems from the Bedu systems, etc., and their constellation of satellites to Pakistani directly. We need to take a strong step forward to clearly move away from the military superiority that we have today to a different level. And to do that, we require 8% of GDP growth minimum, because you have other commitments in India. So, there is a dichotomy between Surakshat Bharat and Viksit Bharat that we need to now reach out. So first issue is demonstrate military superiority with clarity. Second point I was to make is that this was not a fight to only take Muridki and Bahawalpur out. It was also to restore a kind of deterrent that we have. Have we able to restore a deterrence against Pakistan? Now, here I will say that, Pakistan, by the nature of being, the nature of the animal it is, the deterrence, why today we may have established a deterrent, but it will not be a long-term deterrence, and we need to be cautious on this one, for which I go back to that military superiority, which is essential. And the third point of the question you asked, one of the strongest issues that happened is that the Prime Minister unveiled a national security doctrine. And we have been debating that we don't have national security strategy for a long time, and it has been in the making, and it has been circulated and all those things. But a clear-cut, at least on terrorism purpose, a doctrine has been enunciated. Now, which also includes what the question that you asked is that there is what will happen when the next terror attack is equal to war. This is the one. Now, that is equal to war actually puts us on the armed forces into some kind of a thinking process here. So we now need to enunciate clear rules of engagement as to what is the act of terror that mandates that you take actions on day one itself without waiting for rationality. after 10 days rationality settles in. But what would you do on day one itself and subsequently graduate? And how do you manage it? And my last point, and I'll end here by saying that one great thing is that between the diplomacy and the politicians and the military, a kind of escalation control has been managed here. Fantastically done. It is not spoken out. We speak about hitting Nur Khans and Chaklalas, but we don't say how did the escalation control was managed. Was there communication between the diplomats continuing through a third country to convey something across to Pakistanis, or through direct channels, or military to military aware? So there was a solid escalation control despite the kind of massive hitting across there, also by precise action. So the question is that we need to study this art and qualify it in times to come as to what will be the escalation control. No country wants to go to a conventional war. We are economically growing country which has got aims and dreams in mind. So you just cannot walk into a war. So there are many issues that we need to now debate hereafter as to what's going to happen in future.
I think that's very well put. No easy answers to these very complex questions. What scale of terror attack would be equal to war? What is that escalatory ladder, the new escalatory ladder from an Indian perspective going to look like? How will it be calibrated the next time? We don't accept nuclear blackmail, but that's the last little sort of placard that Pakistan's always going to hold up. So, how do we respond in those circumstances? A lot to think about, including what actually unfolds on the ground in the weeks and months to come. We leave it there to Ambassador Sinha, General Sharma, Yashovardhan Azad. Thank you. Always learn so much from all three of you. And thanking our audience. We will continue our special analysis and our ground reports. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.